In this tutorial, we'll go through some quick tips for beginners. Setting up a scene, rendering a scene with transparent background, lighting a scene with IBL, applying graphics, and using real scale materials. First, we look at setting up a simple scene with drag and drop Photo Studio. Open Maxwell Studio and load a standard beginner layout. Make sure the environment lighting is set to none. Drag a 3-point lighting studio from the library into the viewport. Unlock the camera sensor settings and set the resolution to HD format, which means 1920 by 1080 pixels. Make sure to change the pixel aspect to 1. The default setting of 0.9 is a bug. While setting up materials, textures and lighting, it's a good idea to use the pinhole camera to eliminate the depth of field. Select a product photography lens, set the shutter speed to 5, then activate the camera in the viewport and start the interactive renderer. Find an egg OBJ file online and import it. Sometimes the output from 3D modeling software has the wrong scale and orientation. You may need to select, scale and rotate the object and then reset its transformations so they won't interfere with the UV texture projections later. With the egg selected, right-click in the viewport and choose Center Selection or press the C key. Open a plain aluminium material using the Material Editor's file browser and drag it onto the egg in the object list. Right-click on the egg to make a duplicate and arrange the eggs around the world space center. Open a generic plastic material from the RAL plastics lists in the Resources browser and drag it onto the cloned egg. Save the scene so we can use it for the other quick tips. Now we look at outputting a rendering as well as using the Multilight and Resume features. If the UI is in default mode, load a standard beginner layout. Open the scene file we saved before and start the interactive renderer. For a photographic depth of field, change the pinhole lens to a thin lens. Set the f-stop to 16 and the shutter speed to 0.5 seconds. Right-click in the viewport to focus on the front of the right egg. Set the time limit to 20 minutes and the sampling level to 13 in the render options. Set the Multilight option to intensity and the render priority to normal. Specify a file name and location for the rendering, but also for the MXI and MXS files, so we can use the Multilight and resume features later. Always set the bit depth to 16. Now click Render and have a look at the sampling level, the update time and so forth. Once the rendering is done, open the camera, Multilight and preview panels and make some changes to the lights and camera settings, then click Refresh to generate a new rendering on the spot. Save the new render and make sure the bit depth is set to 16. It's a good idea to also save the MXI file in case we want to revert to the original or make more changes later. If we want to resume the renderer to a higher quality, open the MXI file, select a higher sampling level or extra time and click OK. Once done, we can make some changes to the lights and camera settings again and save a new render just like before. If you want to composite your render with a background or photo, it would be difficult to paint a layer mask in Photoshop, so we create it automatically. If the UI is in default mode, load a standard beginner layout and open the scene file we saved before. Maybe change the view, and remember to set the focus if you do. Select the background in the object list and check Hidden from Camera in the Appearance section so it won't be rendered. Check shadows in the global properties of the material that is assigned to the background. Select all objects to be rendered and check Hidden from Camera in the Shadow channel in the Appearance section. Set the output mode to embedded and set alpha and shadow to PNG 16-bit because the extra render channels must have the same file format and bit depth like the main rendering. Click Render and have a look at the sampling level, the update time and so forth. The three buttons on the bottom left allow us to toggle between the main rendering and the extra channels. Once done, open the rendering and shadow channel in Photoshop. Because of the embedded setting, the rendering is already clipped by the alpha channel. Create a new layer below and fill it with a perspective matching photo, solid color or gradient. Copy and paste the shadow channel image above the new layer and set it to linear burn or multiply mode so it blends with what is below. Use the levels function to darken the shadows if needed. Finally, use the Remove Black Matte function to differentiate the render. Now we look at IBL as a straightforward alternative lighting solution. If the UI is in default mode, load a standard beginner layout and open the scene file we saved before. Set the cloned egg's pivot point to its center, then rotate and move it. Clone the cloned egg and assign the terracotta MXM from the materials folder and make the plastic material more reflective. Autofocus or set the camera's focal plane manually in the perspective viewport for more control. Change the camera's shutter to half a second because the HDR image we'll use for lighting is much brighter than the photo studio area lights. You should hide or delete area lights from the scene so their lighting won't interfere with the IBL. Set the environment type to image-based and load an HDR image into the background texture map slot. To see where the light and reflections are coming from, choose the perspective viewport and make sure the display is set to sky. Then rotate the view to look around. While the interactive renderer is running, change the offset to other angles and try other HDR images to see how the mood of the photo changes. Depending on the HDR image, you may have to change the camera's shutter speed to adjust the brightness. Sometimes we need to apply graphics with a certain color, material and finish, and also scale and position them accurately. The most important thing is to understand what that means on the materials side. We are putting a new material on top of an existing material. If the UI is in default mode, load a standard beginner layout and open the scene file we saved before. Delete the cloned egg and put the original back to the world space center. Change the camera to pinhole to set things up. Open the Aluminium Silky Scratches MXM in the material editor and assign it to the egg. When the absolute scale warning shows up, click Yes. Change the egg's UV set projector to cubic and click the Normalize button. Select the material and add a layer, then name it Logo so we remember what it is for. Start the interactive renderer. Click on the New Layers Opacity Mask texture map slot and load the graphic O file. This is a black and white image, where white means transparent and black means opaque, just like a Photoshop layer mask. Set channel to 1 and method to no tiling. But why do we need another channel for logo mapping? The material already uses a bump texture map in global bump using the default texture channel 0. And that corresponds to the X default UV set projector 0. This is why the graphic O texture map that we want to apply independently of other texture maps needs another texture channel, and the object needs another UV set projector. So, with the X selected, we create a new UV set projector in the Geometry section and name it Logo so we remember what it is for. Set the projector type to planar and the channel to 1, then click Adjust. This sets the UV set projector to the center of the object at a 1 by 1 meter default scale. In the Scale X and Y fields, we'll now enter the texture's real-world dimensions. Select the UV set projector and activate the UV mode so we can see it while positioning. Move and rotate it until it is where it should be, and try changing the logo material's color to see what happens. For a multicolored graphic, we texture map the color parameter. Click on the Colors texture map slot and load the graphic D file, then set its channel to 1 so it is applied to the object with the same UV set projector used for the layer opacity mask. If we go back to the object mode and move or rotate the object, the logo remains in place, because an object's UV set projector is transformed with it. The real scale mode is ideal for wood, stone, architectural and outdoor textures, and for products with reliefs, brushings or scratches. In other words, for materials where an exact texture representation is essential, for materials that would otherwise not look realistic. Real scale materials can be dragged and dropped onto any object, and the texture size will always be correct, independent of the object size. If the UI is in default mode, load a standard beginner layout and open the scene file we saved before. Delete the cloned egg and put the original back to the worldspace center. Change the camera to pinhole while setting things up. Open the Plastic ABS Shiny Scratches Dust Lego MXM in the material editor and assign it to the egg. When the absolute scale warning shows up, click Yes to accept it. So, what does this message mean? It tells you that you're assigning a real scale material to an object, a material where at least one of its textures has its application method set to meters, and that means that you need to change the object's UV set projector. So, with the egg selected, change the egg's UV set projector to cubic and click the Normalize button. Activate the UV set mode in the icon menu bar when you want to see or work with an object's UV set projector. It's a green 1 meter cube. When you look at the textures used in this material, you will see they all are using the meters application method, with a real-world size entered in meters. Maybe let the interactive renderer cook for a bit to see more and more detail revealed. And now it is your turn. Thank you for watching and listening.